Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good, from science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I am Rafe, and my voice has moved into, how should I say this, into the bleak midwinter upper respiratory infection stage, I guess you would call it. And so I'm a little under the weather, and since the weather is not great, that means I'm not as great as the weather is not great. So things are not well here for the voice of the buff, but we shall push on, as they say. We will do this for you, the world's greatest listeners. You have made us a global top 10% podcast. We are reachable as usual at buffnagle@buffnagle.com. Remember to share the love, share the buff. Give us a 5-star review, hit subscribe and like the smiley stars, and tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. And somewhere buried in the show notes is a place to buy me a coffee or hot chocolate or one of those, I don't know, a shot of some magic elixir that will return my voice to its, what do they say, to a face for radio, right? Or something like that. Insert your own joke there. We shall press on, as they say. When we last left you on our trip across France in November, we were leaving the port of Lyon and heading on our way to Orléans, which is a place I had not realized how important it was, or is. I guess it was, and it probably still is, in the history of France and in Western Europe in general. The Orléans is the site of the siege of Orléans, and that siege of Orléans took place in the 1400s, toward the end of the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War was it was a really long war. Okay. And it was basically a dispute about who's going to be running France. And it's kind of funny to me because the English come in the 1300s, and they decide to, the English say, you know what, we should be in charge of France because we're English. So the English press in there, and this war begins about who's going to be who is the rightful king of France. And there were different people who were trying to do these things. By the early 1400s, the English had gained the upper hand, and lots of northern France were under control of the English. Southern France was still loyal to the French king, but parts of Western France, southwestern France, and Eastern France, the area called Burgundy, were allied with the English. So that in itself is at least a 2-episode podcast. But what matters is, at the time, maybe a quarter of the way down from the north in France is a place called Orléans, and it sits on a river called Loire, or maybe the Loire River. I would probably call it the Loire River, but it's pronounced something in French that I have trouble saying because the R's are funny. That was the northernmost outpost of French-controlled France, I guess is the way to put it. Everything north of that was English, and everything south of that was France. I feel obligated. Zach will point this out to me now. If I don't say it now, he will point this out to me. The quote from from the Heath Ledger Shakespeare kind of thing. What was it called? A Knight's Tale. The Pope may be French, but Jesus English. So that's always the defense, I guess, when arguments come up between France and England. You can see the movie if you'd like. It's quite funny. It is a piece of it's good. It's good, jolly fun. A retelling of some of Chaucer's tales, or part of Chaucer's tales, The Knight's Tale, and it's a good story. And Heath Ledger does a great job as the knight, and there's some great comedy in there, some interesting anachronisms in there, some things that are out of time, but they fit very well. For example, the people in the stands at the jousting tournaments stomp their feet and clap to Queen's "We Will Rock You." So that's a little out of place in time. But in general, it's a funny movie, and the Pope may be French, but Jesus is English. So that makes sense if you see the film. Anyway, Orléans is the northernmost outpost of the French area. And the English have, they know that if they can take Orléans, they pretty much can take the rest of France. And it's been decades of effort by the English to push the French back that far down. Paris is north of Orléans, so Paris is now in English-occupied area at that time. And somewhere up in the northeast area, a young lass named Joan has a vision, and Michael the archangel tells her that she should go help the rightful king of France get enthroned there. And part of that involves essentially through a rather circuitous route, she ends up going to Orléans to help break the siege of Orléans. So the English have surrounded the city pretty much, except for, and this seems a little odd to me, except for some areas they don't really patrol very well along the north, which you would think they would because that's English territory. So Joan sneaks into Orléans on the 29th of April, 1429, and everybody's very glad that this young lady this maiden who has been prophesied, should come and save France. So she has appeared here, and the siege has been underway for quite some time, several months. So over the course of 10 days, from the 29th of April to the 8th of May, 1429, the siege is ended. A couple little skirmishes and battles between the French and the English take place. The French drive the pesky English back away from Orléans, and they open up navigation on the Loire River, and all is well. And the rest, as they say, is history. And so we wanted to go to Orléans to see this thing. It's one thing to read this in the encyclopedia on the interwebs. It's one thing to listen to episode 62 of this podcast from November 23rd, 2021, which discusses Joan of Arc. But it's another thing to actually go there. So we took the train in France from Lyon up to Orléans, and arrived there one evening. And then I did a little walk around the hotel and had some dinner. And then the next day we went out and saw some sights. We saw the Hotel Grosset, which is the old mayor's house, but now serves as kind of a sales pitch for tourism there in Orléans. And that was a marvelous place. I guess I knew that these things happened in Orléans, but I didn't know how much the Orleanians really, really sign on with this thing. They have a festival every year from late April into early May, those 10 days. They have a 10-day festival every year to celebrate the lifting of the siege. And what's really interesting to me is not only is it that they reenact some stuff, and they have little speeches, and they have concerts and light shows and things like that. But the pinnacle of this is the election of Joan. They elect a 17-year-old girl who is there are several very strict criteria that she has to meet in order to be elected Joan. And it's think of it like a beauty pageant where the objective is to be most like Saint Joan of Arc, of any of these 700, I don't know, however many women it is that are eligible, to be most like Joan of Arc than any of your other competitors. And this girl wins I'll call it like a pageant. And she gets awarded a sword. The previous year's winner hands off the sword to this year's winner, and then she rides a horse around and leads, carries the banner, and they have a big parade, and then they go to the cathedral, and she gets inducted or whatever it is, and gives a little speech. And this is typically a girl. She has to be 17 at the time. She has to be a Roman Catholic. She has to have been a citizen of Orléans for at least a decade, and attend one of the schools there like that. So she has to be a local girl that's doing this thing. And apparently this is a highly, it's highly competitive, I guess, or something that's highly wanted, but it was phenomenal to see the joy on the faces of the people. We weren't there for the ceremonies and the things, but we saw the videos of them. People are very happy. Everybody likes to see the new Joan who comes into her reign, I guess, as it is. And then she is an ambassador of the city of Orléans for the next year or so. And she has to do, just like the beauty pageant people they have obligations. This girl has obligations to the city, and she has to, have right conduct and all that kinds of things. And she is, she's a heroine now for a year, and then she passes the sword to the next little girl. And they've been doing this for decades, if not centuries. They've been having the celebration or the observation of the lifting of the siege for almost since the siege was lifted, and that was nearly 600 years ago. So this is a long time ongoing thing, and it's a wonderful thing. And all of this, a lot of this information on how this is done can be found there at the Hotel Groslet in downtown Orléans, which is not very big, but it's very fun, very walkable. The inner city piece is, you can see it's the old medieval town. And it goes right down to the river, and you can see, some of the battle walls and those kinds of things where the bridges were. And there's a lot of historical stuff there. It's a very fast moving river. The current there is remarkably strong, and that makes it valuable for a number of reasons, for power and for other things in the Middle Ages. Now it makes it kind of dangerous if you don't go swimming in there, because as soon as you get in the water, next thing you know, you're several meters downstream. So it is a fun town to visit. They have a music festival there every other year or so, I think it is. And it's one of the largest music festivals in Europe. And apparently that is a bash that is, how do they say it, unequaled across the continent. It is a very, very big festival, and it rocks and rolls for a week or so. They do the similar thing. At the center of town is the cathedral, where where cathedral things happen, and it is a remarkable Gothic cathedral. There, it is. You can see the pieces that have been renovated and updated, and of course, in the mid 1800s, it was falling into disrepair, and they fixed it up real well. It is. I'm okay. Here's a little spoiler. I think it might be more impressive than Notre Dame in Paris, and just because of its, I think it just seemed to me bigger and just more stately, and maybe that it was less what would be the right word? Less showy, less of a tourist attraction, less commercial. It was incredible, the magnitude of the work they did there, the size of the buttresses and the size of the towers, and just the sheer immensity of this thing was incredible. And it was there's lots of stained glass homage to Joan of Arc, and it was a breathtaking experience there. Beautiful mosaic and uh, great Gothic stonework, and it's still in very good shape. It has been restored. The things that have fallen apart have been restored very well, and it looks. It is an incredible place to go and see, and to be part of the history of Christendom there in France. Simply a breathtaking cathedral there in Orléans. We saw the Joan of Arc house, which was actually a restoration of the house, because the house that she actually stayed in is long gone, but they have built a new one. We found, and this is kind of where we went off track of our plan a little bit. We found a little toy store that we had not anticipated finding, and let's just say we took care of a lot of our Christmas shopping was done there in Orléans, when we found a store that had appropriate gifts for all the little grandkids in our life. It was we had to go then and get a new suitcase, because we were bringing back more things than we anticipated. There are lots of geocaches there around Orléans, and we found some of them. That was fun. A very walkable city, a very nice city, much more human-sized, I think, than a place like Paris. Paris is a major world city. Orléans is very nice in that it, I guess I'll call it second tier, but that sometimes for some of us, second tier is a really nice place to be. So that was Orléans. We went there. We didn't kick out the English. They have long gone. There's a very large statue of Joan in the town square, of course, on a horse doing Joan of Arc things. And it's we liked Orléans a lot. There was a little tram that took us to the train station and back, and we left Orléans and went up to Paris after a couple of days. Our trip to Paris was good, but not as good as we would have liked. And we went back to Paris to see a couple things that we had not seen before. And when we were there a year and a half ago, Notre-Dame de Paris, the cathedral there in Paris, was still under construction or under reconstruction after the fire from 2019. So we were prohibited from entering there. So we wanted to see it after its renovation. And we wanted to go up to Sacré-Cœur, which is up on the northern end of town. We wanted to see that. And I also wanted to see Sainte-Chapelle, which is right down there in downtown Paris, right there on the island in the middle of the Seine. We went first to Notre-Dame, which is now open, and it was remarkable. I had been there the first time 25, maybe 30 years ago. I forget exactly. I was on a business trip, and I went over and saw the things. And my recollection there from 25 or 30 years ago was that it was, I'll call it dark and medieval, lots of candles. And, they had been burning candles in there for hundreds of years. And it was dark inside. There was a lot of, there wasn't a lot of lighting like there is now. And the renovation has produced a church that is very, very bright. Lots of electric light there, which is good. Brings the light in at night. Although the big windows also allow a lot of natural light during the day. It seemed pretty sterile to me with the renovation. It was beautiful. It was well done. It was clean, but it didn't feel old. And I'm trying to figure out if I liked that or didn't like that. Part of me liked it because it felt fresh, and I think freshness sometimes helps. Otherwise, it can. I'm pretty much a traditionalist, but that doesn't mean that I want my furniture to smell like it's been in the attic. So I think Notre Dame in Paris was great, except for it wasn't quite. It didn't have the mystery and the majesty that it had 25 years ago when it felt older. There are some things there that are fantastic. Lots of there are side altars all the way around the building, everyone dedicated to a different saint. Priceless works of art inside there. They are still awaiting some more stained glass windows that are going to be unique to all those side altars, and they have not yet been put in. So that was the thing that we didn't get to see, obviously, but there was it is a wonder. You have to go there. It's the first church of Christendom there in the West. And Napoleon, for example, was crowned emperor there. All right. These are places, these are real pieces of history that you can go visit and see. Just like you go listen to the George Washington podcasts here that we did when Benedict Arnold tried to sell West Point to the British, or try to get West Point to the British from the Americans when he tried to tradearize them. I've been there, I've seen those places, and now I've been there and I've seen the places like Notre Dame, and these are important to see and to know and to understand. It's one thing to read, it's another thing to go. So you should go and you should do this. And like I said, we went in autumn, early winter, and it was great. The crowds were very thin, and there was no line, and it was wonderful, good stuff. There's tremendous. There are murals, and there relief murals around the backside of the altar in that area you can walk around that describe my recollection. I remember describing the whole, I guess I'll call it the New Testament, is there on one side, and you can see the important stories of the New Testament are there in a relief carving, a gigantic relief there. And that takes you, it's very nice. It takes you through the stories, it points you to the gospel verses that take you there. And that is a wonderful thing. The artwork is great for helping with education of the masses to learn the stories of the Bible. It was wonderful. Notre Dame was wonderful, and it's very big and very grand, but it's a lot cleaner and more sterile than it used to be, and that takes a little mystery out of it. So that's not a negative score against Notre Dame de Paris, but it's something to be wary of. And then we went to Sainte-Chapelle, which is a church that was built, in the Dark Ages, right? Louis the Ninth, maybe, got a hold of some relics, some official relics. He got the crown of thorns, and he decided we need a chapel to place these in. So he built a chapel there, not far from Notre Dame, a couple blocks away, and it is absolutely breathtaking. I know I've said that before. I would go to these places and my chest tightens, because that's a reaction to beauty. This thing, the upper chapel, is covered with something like 1,300 stained glass windows depicting essentially every major story in the Old and New Testament. This whole window is Genesis. This whole window is the book of Job. This whole window is the book of Kings. It's this whole thing, and all the little panes take you through the stories. So it provides, these are the illustrations for when you read the story. And if you have an illiterate population like you did in the 1400s, this was a great thing. A lot of these stories are repeated on, at least the Genesis story is repeated outside on the western portal of, make sure I get this right. Yes, the western portal of the chapel. It takes you through the Genesis story. And I was out there looking at these, they're carvings, probably about, I want to say like 20 inches, each one maybe 20 inches square. And so there were dozens of them, if not more, out there, taking you everything from in the beginning all the way through Noah's Ark. And it was the whole story. And there was a couple there that they were looking at these carvings in the stone on the western side, and the guy was saying to his wife, he said, "Well, I think these are all telling a story, but I don't really know what it's trying to say." And it was pretty obvious if you start in the right place, which is the lower left, and move to your right, and then go up, then it told the story of Genesis, of the creation story. And I pointed this out to him. I said, I think it's the creation story. You can see here's in the beginning, there was the air moving over the water and over the void, and then let there be light. So here's the second one, has this big star showing light, and then night and day, and animals and the plants and all this kind of stuff. And there's this really, really wonderful one of this gigantic, I think it was a gigantic hand pulling this man out of the dirt, right? Pulling Adam out of the ground. And I said, here's God pulling Adam out of the ground. And I took him all the way through the story, pointing this all out. And it was very interesting to me, because he looked at me like I was, like from another planet or something like that, because I knew these Bible stories. And he said, "How'd you learn all that?" And I said, I went to Sunday school. And it is interesting to me, like when there's this thing they do in film sometimes, and I've seen people do it, I've seen people do it with their iPhones, where they're focused on something up front, and then they change the focal length, and you see something that is in the background, that the background comes into focus, and the foreground loses its focus. So you shift from close to far away. And I think they used to do that in the old days with like turning they turn the lens thing so it changes the focal length. And I witnessed this with him, telling him the stories, that you could see suddenly the lens, his lens of viewing what he was seeing, his lens suddenly came into focus. And you can see the light bulb goes off above his head. And, suddenly when they come to know. And it is such a wonderful thing to be able to be a part of that, to explain to him what he was seeing, because then his focus changed from these are carvings on the outside of a building to, oh, this is a piece of a grander story. And when you go inside the building, then the rest of the story is carried out in these gigantic, it is difficult to explain how, I don't want to say big, because they weren't necessarily big. There were just so many of them. And they're in this beautiful shade of blue from the Middle Ages. And I keep thinking, yes, this was built in the Dark Ages. Like I said, the great PR fraud, the greatest PR fraud of all time was the concept that there were Dark Ages. And this was in the Dark Ages, right? When the Renaissance was when they were starting to, when the light was turning back on. This is what people had been doing all this time, was building these great things. There were craftsmen that were doing wonderful work. There were people who were knowledgeable and learned back in the day. They did all this stuff. There were no Dark Ages. They were not dark. They were different. There was not the technology that we have now, but it was a place full of wondrous beauty and understanding and mystery and a certain understanding of how man relates to the cosmos. It was just phenomenal. And the whole thing was designed to show off the crown of thorns that Louis had brought back. It was a phenomenal thing to see. And Notre Dame was great. Sainte-Chapelle blew it away. And if you get a chance to go, you should go. It is, but make sure you know your stories before you go, so you can read the pictures, so it's in focus for you, so nobody has to wander in it and explain it all to you. We went that afternoon to Sacré-Cœur, which is a basilica on the north side of town. It's much more recent. It is in a bad area of town, so be careful. Don't go at night. Don't go in the evening. You have to be careful in Paris. It has become a gigantic city, and it is not what it once was. It's just in a bad area of town, but it's a phenomenal place to see. There is a mosaic behind the altar that continues, and it's not on a flat surface. It's on the back wall, but the back wall curls over onto the ceiling. But when you stand in the back of the church and look, the perspective is such that everything that's on the back wall and on the ceiling looks like it sits on a vertical plane. And I don't know if they stretch the mosaic so that when you look at it from a distance, it gets properly aligned with the distancing. It is just to see that mosaic behind the altar is worth doing. It's a big mosaic of Christ as a super duper guy. And it's Sacré-Cœur, so it's the Basilica of the Sacred Heart. And you can, there it is. It is wonderful. It's worth your trip up there. It's a little bit of a subway, and then you got to walk up the hill, and just be careful on the subway. That can be an interesting thing. We took a chance to see some other things. We went to some local shops. We went to see the store that sold us the stove and the range hood that's in our house here, the French factory there. And we saw all sorts of this. It was just, we saw the little things that we had wanted to see, but didn't get a chance to see last time we were there. The trip ended on kind of a bad note. My wallet was taken by a gentleman in the subway, a very crowded subway. He took advantage of the fact that people were jostling around and decided to reach into my front pocket and extract my wallet, but he did not extract my passport nor my cell phone. So we were able to get back. My wife had a debit card to get us out. We shut down our credit cards and debit cards, and the poor guy got away with my wallet, my driver's license, my Lego VIP card, and $20 in US cash. Didn't get a chance to use my credit cards or debit cards. And it's a, what do you say? What do you say? I feel for the guy. I really do. It's, he had to be mid to late 30s. I just can't imagine that life. It's got to be tough. And what do you do? What do you do? How do you stop that? I don't know the answer, other than keep your valuables close to you and keep those close to you. Paris and France. What a great trip. Those places are not what they used to be. Things are changing. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. You should go see them while you have the chance. They are worth seeing because they are components of the good. They are testaments to what humanity can accomplish when it sets its mind to it. They are not without fault. They are not without error, but they show the best of us, and that is a really good thing. Like I said, keep your valuables close to you. Be careful on the subways and stuff. It's not what it was, but that doesn't mean it can't become a good thing again. It's all up to us to keep it going in that direction. And in the meantime, you can try to make your life, I don't know, I guess a model of that by doing those things that are good. Build. What do we say? Make beautiful, good things in love. And those things that are there, they were built hundreds, if not, well, I don't want to say thousands, because some of those, it's very rare to find those things that are 1,000 years old. These are things that were built by your ancestors that were carried forward to you for you. And people work very hard to make sure that they are there for the next guy. And some people, like I said, started working on them and never saw them get completed. It is worth your effort to try to do that for your grandkids, but for more than that, for your grandkids. And if you can do something like that, then you have really done a great thing, and you've created a tradition. Tradition is a word that means handing down to the next group. And we should look to do that. Is your furniture going to be around? Is your house going to be around? Are your ideas going to be around? Do those things that will last. Create good, beautiful things in love, and people will want to pass them on. And then go see the wonderful things, in particular, Sainte-Chapelle. And take a trip down to Orléans, but don't swim in the river because you'll get carried downstream. In the meantime, we will see you next week here in the Buff. Remember to seek the good, live virtuously, and flourish, and enjoy the adventure of life.
It's going to be a great day.